I was wondering how many people in here have ever had malaria? And you can stand up if you've had malaria. Did you have malaria? Oh. Kunli has had malaria. Many times. All right. So in your name tags, there should be little mosquitoes in the back of them, and you can take those out, and I guess there's mosquitoes or an Imagine No Malaria logo. So if you have those, just check them out, look at them. And if you have a black or red mosquito, please stand up. Yes, black or red. Yes, or pink or purple. If you have a mosquito, stand up. Yes. So all the people who are standing up represent how common malaria is. And this would be found in sub-Saharan parts of Africa, such as Sierra Leone. So if you have a black mosquito, go ahead and sit down. Wow, like no one sat down. So this represents the adults who have had malaria. And if you're an adult and have malaria, you most likely will be successful with it. Like you'll continue to live. And if you do have malaria, it's kind of like the flu. You'll have headaches and chills and fever and vomit and all that stuff. And you'll miss work for a little bit, but as long as you get to a place where you can get treated and diagnosed, you'll be safe. So if you have a red mosquito, yes, everyone standing has a red mosquito. So you represent children. And if you are under 5 years old as a child and have malaria, you most likely will not make it. And if you are a pregnant woman, you could pass on malaria to your unborn child. I know some of the guys are laughing, but so you guys can sit down. From this exercise, you can just kind of see how widespread malaria is. And we will be talking about how you can treat and diagnose malaria.
Thank you. Good evening, YLC. Are you there? All right, all the way. Longs Peak, Park Hill, St. Andrew, Windsor, Greeley, some are still on the way, but it's great to be here with you. My name is Mike Dent. I'm a pastor, Methodist minister for 40 years. I started when I was 3 years old, and here I am. I'm the pastor of the Trinity Methodist Church in downtown Denver, the oldest church in Denver. The church is 154 years old. I'm not quite that old, but I'm proud to be the pastor of that church, and I'm very proud to be the co-chair of the Imagine No Malaria steering team for the Rocky Mountain Conference. And when Bishop Elaine asked me to do that last year, I was delighted. And I want to tell you a little bit why, as we talk a little bit about malaria tonight. This is history being made tonight here in this place. We are launching the Rocky Mountain Conference Imagine No Malaria campaign here at the Youth Leadership Conference. So it's a joy for us to be here, and I know more will be coming in as we go through the evening. As you just learned from Becca, malaria is a disease that's carried by mosquitoes. It bites people and it affects them. It's a parasite, and you'll learn about that in just a little bit. About 60 years ago in this country, thanks to a major public initiative, health initiative campaign, malaria disappeared in our country. Nobody else died of malaria in our country, and we're grateful for that. A week from today, on February the 1st, I'm going down to Texas to baptize my first grandchild, my grandson. He'll be a year old on February the 3rd. And we'll never have to worry about him getting malaria because he lives in this country. But today, January 25th, 2013, 1,440 children died of malaria today in the world. That's every 60 seconds. A child 5 or under dies of malaria. And for God and for God's people called Methodists, that's unacceptable. Totally unacceptable. But this Bible here I have in my hand tells us that Jesus said that we are to care for the children among us, that we're to care for the sick, we're to treat them as if they were Jesus himself. And so about 6 or 7 years ago, a program called Nothing But Nets was started. Have you heard of Nothing But Nets? And some of you are old enough to remember that. And you gave $10 and you bought a net, and a mosquito net helps save a life, and there's a net right over there on that table. You can see one. And it was a great campaign, and the Methodist Church raised about $7.5 million to buy nets around the world. Nothing but nets, 2006. It was a visionary campaign. It was a successful campaign. It was an important campaign. But God has given the Methodist Church now a much bigger vision. In fact, 10 times as big. We have been invited and challenged through Imagine No Malaria to raise $75 million to get rid of malaria. Yeah, you can applaud that. $75 million. Now that sounds like a lot of money, but there are almost 8 million Methodists in the country. That's just $10 a person. So that's pretty easy to do. Not everybody can do it, though. Not everybody will do it. But in the Rocky Mountain Conference, our goal is $1.2 million. So we have over 60,000 Methodists, so that's about $20 a person. And I think the youth of our conference are going to lead the way. We're going to, indeed, you'll hear more about that from the bishop in a bit, but we have a great opportunity to get rid of malaria. Our goal is by 2015, that's just 2 years away, to raise that money and get rid of this disease that is preventable, that is treatable, and is indeed curable. So you think we can raise that money? I do too. Last October, I went with a group, our steering team members and Bishop Elaine, to Angola. It's a country in the southern part of Africa where there is malaria. And we went for a week to distribute mosquito nets and to meet the church leaders there and to be a part of worship services there. And before I went down to the bank by our church in downtown Denver to get some money because my credit card wouldn't be good in Africa. And so I withdrew quite a bit of money because you got to pay for the hotel and food and everything. And I got my cash money, and the lady said, "Are you going on a trip?" And she was a young lady, probably early 20s. I said, "Yeah." She said, "Where are you going?" I said, "I'm going to Angola." "Really? What are you going to do in Angola?" And I said, "We're going to save the lives of children." And she would just look stunned. And she said, "Thank you for doing that." And I want to thank you tonight for doing that, because you're going to be leaders in your church. Some of your pastors have already been invited to be a part of this. In an annual conference, they will be. But thank you for leading the way and helping to save the lives of children.
I want you to stand up. You've been sitting long enough. Because this is all about kids, and this is a song that you know. So I want you to sing, okay? Ready? Jesus loves the little children, all the children of the world. The shades, they've changed the words too. They are precious in His. Okay, where's our band? Let's start again. Maybe a little higher. Jesus loves the little children, all the children of the world. All the shades from dark to light, they are precious in His sight. Jesus loves the little children of the world. Even the purple ones, yes. Okay, sit down. Have a seat. Next slide. Okay, now this, in case you didn't catch on, I'm a teacher. I'm awful close to this mic. And I probably could fill this room with my voice anyway. I teach microbiology at the University of Utah, and microbes are cool. We have another microbiologist over here? Wonderful, okay. So I teach people that in the clinical laboratory science. So you're a big group, you're a smart group of young people, and I bet you can answer this first question. How does a person get malaria? Mosquitoes, okay. So if you have mosquito, who said mosquitoes? Okay, if you have malaria and a mosquito bites you and then immediately bites me, can I get malaria? Okay, so how many people think the answer to that is yes? How many have always thought the answer was yes? But now that I'm asking the question, you're starting to question okay. So next slide. Okay, so this is one of those pictures that makes my students' eyes kind of roll in the back of their head. And we're not going to go through this. But where the little pointed area is that the mosquito is not just a vector. In science, we talk about vectors as, like we said, like flies. If the fly lands on your food and it has just been on a pile of garbage, it can take a disease straight to your food. Mosquitoes can do that with some diseases, but it's not that way with malaria. With malaria, the mosquito is an essential part of its life cycle. The mosquito has to bite you and pull in the right stages of the parasite in order for them to get together. It's actually where the mosquitoes have sex. Where the malaria has sex is in the mosquito. And then it has to be able to put the tiniest stage of it back into the new person. So the malaria has to spend a little bit of time in the mosquito to mature before it can give it to the next person. So that's one of the reasons that the bed nets are so important, because it isn't an immediate exchange. Anything you can do to stop that will slow it down dramatically because of that extra time that it has to spend in the mosquito. Okay, next question, next slide, which is the other question. Why don't we have malaria in the United States? Okay. We don't have the right temperature and climate. That's partly right, but actually we used to have malaria in the U.S., all the way up as far as Washington, D.C. So that there's two problems to this. One is that malaria, there's 3 different types of malaria that affect humans. There are 4 different species, but one of them, the bug hangs out in your liver, back to that life cycle thing, and so it can live through the winter, and then the mosquito can bite you again in the spring. So that's part of the reason, is that we had a different species than the one that lives in Africa. The one that lives in Africa kills you, but it doesn't live through the winter. So it has a discrete area. But the main reason we don't have, and this is, I can hear my professor's voice in my head, the main reason we don't have malaria in the US is that we have moved inside and we put screens on our windows. Yes, we sprayed DDT all over the place, and we did a lot of things to prevent the spread of, we put oil on ponds, but the main reason we don't have malaria now is that we live mostly inside in the evenings. We aren't out when the mosquitoes are biting. So that's, when I first heard about nothing but nets, I went, yes, bingo, eureka, epiphany. That's the best thing you can do, is screen over all these little beds, all these little huts. They don't all have houses. And to prevent malaria. So the nothing but nets was such a logical thing to do, such an easy and logical thing to do. So let's move on. We'll tell you a little more about me. Next slide. Oh yeah, there's the liver thing, but we already said that. Okay, so that's me in 1971. I was 18 years old. That's the first time I went to Africa. So kind of like Becca, I had a really amazing opportunity to go there. And when I was looking at this picture, when I made it, I see a guy with a bell in the back. There was some big ceremony going on, but you can tell that I wasn't paying any attention to this ceremony. I was with the children, and this little girl was loving on me, and I was loving on her, and so the children of Africa have captivated me for a long, long time. Next slide. Another little girl. In 2000, so between 71 and 2004, I grew up, went to college, got married, had babies, raised family, and then in 2004, kids were grown, and I finally had an opportunity to go back to Africa. And I was going then as a professional person, as a microbiologist, and this little girl named Aditsa, who's on the back, was near death. She was unconscious. She had cerebral malaria. Her parents lived in an outlying area, but they were rather affluent. And if they hadn't had the ability to get into the city and get treatment, Aditsa would have died. And that was the standard of care there. The medications were not available out in the villages. Diagnostics were not available out in the villages. But she was able to come into a modern hospital, as you can see in the other picture there. Next slide. Okay, so this is where I was working in the laboratory. Every one of those little tubes of blood represent patients that they were testing for malaria. So if you were coming in to have a malaria test, you would have your blood drawn. Next slide. And they would have to stain it by hand. And sometimes the water ran and sometimes it didn't. And we had a barrel of water. So then you had to stain it, dry it, all those kind of things. Next slide. And then each slide had to be examined by a trained professional. And next slide. And assuming that the electricity was working, you could see the malaria parasite. So this is there's several phases to the malaria parasite, but this is the one that the mosquito has to suck up. This is the gametocyte phase of it, which this particular one is very characteristic of the kind of malaria that kills you. So, and the electricity would go out, the lights would go out. We've worked on all kinds of things. So it took a day or two in order to get the diagnosis. And then they would have had to been either giving you medicine or not, but they would be flying by the seat of their pants because they didn't have a good diagnosis. Okay, next slide. So part of that is a contrast between a baby. Aditya would have surely died. This is last summer. This is my friend Simone, and he's a colleague who teaches laboratory medicine in a small college in Ghana. And all through our presentation, he was getting weaker and weaker and weaker. And finally he says, you know, I think I got malaria. And he went, next slide, he went to the clinic and they could do a rapid kit test. You probably haven't yet, you're probably not to the age where you have seen a pregnancy test, but it's very much like the over-the-counter. You just put a drop of blood on there, a couple little lines appear, and they know whether you've got malaria or not. So it's an amazing thing that these have been made available. Next one. And on Friday, he was perfectly wonderful. He could go right straight to the clinic, to the pharmacist, get his medication, and go on from there. Next slide. So there's this new medicine out there that comes from the wormwood plant. It's called artesunate or artemisinins, and it's cheap, it's readily available, and the World Health Organization is getting it into all the little villages. So where it used to be an expensive medication, which had some pretty nasty side effects, now it's a really cheap medicine that can be made available. It's stable, they can put it in all the villages. So there's been a tremendous advance in the last few years. So Reverend Dent was showing some pictures of why we went from Nothing But Nets to Imagine No Malaria. Nothing But Nets was a fantastic program, and it cut the death from malaria in half. To be part of that, you should give yourselves a big pat on the back, because we really have cut it, just with the nets, have cut the rate of malaria, of deaths from malaria in half. But next slide. Oh, there's the pills, there's the plant. Next slide. Oh yeah, so we've got these huge improvements. We're combating this disease in many more different places than we were before. Not only are we putting the physical barrier against the mosquitoes, but we've got rapid diagnosis that works, and we've got better medicine. And in 4 years' time, just my little interaction with the same laboratory, it's been a huge step forward. And you can see the rate of malaria going down. Next slide. So there's Aditya. That's not, I don't know what her village was, but that's a village in the northern part of Ghana, which is like the kind of village where she was. And you can see standing water in front. That's how you get malaria. Standing water breeds mosquitoes. So prevention we've been working on. The prevention piece was the nets, but now we have treatment. We have education. We're communicating more with the people, and we're out there fighting for them. So preventable, treatable, and beatable. It's a tremendous step forward, and that's why Imagine No Malaria is nothing but nets on steroids. It's going for the goal of eradicating the disease. Okay. Next slide, I think. Okay. So it is my absolute pleasure to reintroduce the bishop to you. So Elaine Stanovsky, I think you're next. No, we're going to do the other video. Okay. Thanks.
Awesome, huh? Did you know Polly Perrette is a United Methodist? Member of a church in Hollywood, California. And the way she got to be a United Methodist was she moved to Hollywood and she was trying to find, I don't remember, a place to stay or a good place to buy. I don't remember. Anyway, she was talking to somebody in a store, and the person in the store was so helpful to her that she said, you are a great person. What makes you such a positive person? And the person said, I go to the United Methodist Church. So Polly Perrette became a United Methodist and a significant supporter of this effort. All right, I'm going to teach a song. How many of you have gone to church camp in the summer? All right. If you go to church camp in United Methodist Church Camp in Hawaii, you learn this song. You got to stand up. I know, church camp in Hawaii. Go figure. Now, some of you have learned this maybe before. So if you know it, help us out. It's got, I need you to help me here. So there are hand motions, and your hands are going to act like mosquitoes. And so I was thinking about this today. I've never really given a group permission to do this, but when you're doing the mosquito part, especially the third part, I think it's okay to kind of get in other people's faces, right? So it goes like this. Mosquitoes, they fly high. Mosquitoes, they fly low. Mosquitoes, they fly everywhere. Mosquitoes kill no more. Okay? Got it? Let's do it. Mosquitoes, they fly high. Mosquitoes, they fly low. Mosquitoes, they fly everywhere. Mosquitoes kill no more. All right. Good job. Sit down. A year ago in October, I was with a group that went to Angola this year in October, but a year ago in October, I went with a group from the Rocky Mountain and Yellowstone annual conferences to Haiti. And this is where my eyes were opened about malaria. Because to go to Haiti, they give you malaria drugs, and you take them for about a week before you go. Every day you take a big fat pill, and every day that you're there, you take a pill, and then you take them for about a week after you come home. So I'm taking my malaria pills so I don't have to worry about getting malaria. But we're way out in a village. It's after the big earthquake that destroyed most of everything in Haiti. And so we're rebuilding a school and a church that collapsed. And the first crews that came in put up these really temporary plywood buildings that were open air for the classrooms for the school. We had one of those classrooms. Well, the men had one classroom and the women had another classroom. And we had cots in there. There was no electricity. We had cots in there. And there were ropes strung across kind of a little bit above head height. And we hung all of our malaria nets from those strings, from those ropes. And they came down and fell around us in our cots. And so the first night, we set everything up, and we got there, we set everything up, it got dark, and pretty soon we all go to bed. And I'm lying in my bed under my malaria net when Dina, our cook, who's Haitian, comes in to get into her cot. And she doesn't have a net. Well, she's probably had malaria and survived it as an adult. So she's probably not exposed or in danger. But what hit me in that moment was, why do I get to be protected, but my partners in Haiti have no protection? And that's when I thought, man, I come here and I see you kids, and I introduced myself to some of you beforehand, and I was saying, God has a good plan for your life, and I can barely even say that looking you in the eye without choking up. And all these kids, all those little babies that you hold in your arm, God has a good plan for their lives, and a lot of them never going to get to live them. So that's why we're doing this. It is about saving lives. It's about ensuring that God's plan and promise that every human being should live life fully will come to pass for people in sub-Saharan Africa. All right, now I'm supposed to get on script. So, malaria. I thought you were going to hurt me. Hey, God has a good plan for your lives. Don't forget it. Why malaria? Because it's, I hope you've learned these words, preventable, treatable, beatable. Say it with me. Preventable, treatable, beatable. And if we can prevent it, treat it, beat it, we must. And we can. So say it with me. We can. We must. We will. We can. We must. I don't have any memory left at all. We will. We can. Together. We can. We must. We will. All right. Are there 4 people in the room who want to end malaria in sub-Saharan Africa? I see you back here with a hat. Come up. And you over here. And you there. And you over here. Some of us have these wristbands on. And I want to make sure all of you get a wristband. These are Imagine No Malaria wristbands. Make sure everybody's got a wristband. And what I want you to do is to, when you wear this band, remember that you are privileged to live in a place where you are not in danger of malaria. All right, while we're handing them out, we can, we must, we will, 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 we can, we must, we will. All right, all right. So malaria is beatable. And one of the amazing things that we discovered when we were in Angola oh, you know, I used to know this when I was a pastor. Do not hand out things during the children's sermon, right? Oh, well, I'm out of practice. So one of the amazing things we discovered in Angola is that malaria, you can just put them here, thank you, all of you, is that malaria is a capacity building disease. So we really do need to beat malaria. But what we found in Bom Jesus, the little town that we came to, I'm probably getting out of order, so don't worry about the, maybe I should have. All right, we'll get to this in a minute. Okay, so why malaria? Because we can, we must, and we will. And why the United Methodist Church? Why is the United Methodist Church invested in this effort? Couple of reasons. One, we have a historic, from our very beginnings, we have a historic commitment to physical health as well as spiritual health of our people. John Wesley, the founder of Methodism, wrote a kind of popular medicine book that talked about all kind of goofy things, actually, if you want to read it sometime. Goofy home remedies for a variety of problems that people faced. And we still today in the world have about 300 hospitals, clinics, and health centers spread across Africa. And one of the reasons that the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, my goodness, how much bigger is that than the United Methodist Church? It's way bigger than we are. And the United Nations Foundation want to partner with the United Methodist Church is because when you're in Africa and you're traveling on a pitted, tough, rough road and you're in an all-terrain vehicle and you're going up and down the bumps and it's taken you an hour to go 10 miles, 5 miles, at the end of the road, there's a United Methodist Church. And often far beyond the end of the road, down a path through the plains or the jungles, there's a United Methodist Church. So we have on the ground partners that are in neighborhoods that are able to organize to beat this disease. And that's what we found in Bom Jesus. It was really amazing. we traveled some of these roads way outside Luanda, the capital city, and we came to a village that sits on a hillside above the Kwanzaa River. And the Kwanzaa River you see in the picture is where everybody does their laundry and all of the local sewage is poured out. And it's, again, a breeding ground for mosquitoes. But in that town, because of the mosquitoes, there's a higher than average death rate for malaria in Angola. And there's a strong United Methodist Church. And so this became the place for a net distribution. And 6 of us came from Rocky Mountain Conference and Yellowstone Conference to distribute about 9,000 nets to a village of about 12,000 people. And the reason Bom Jesus was chosen was that the church was strong. And so about 20-something young adults from our United Methodist Church were trained to be healthcare activists. It was such a great title, healthcare activists who went door to door throughout the village to sign people up to receive their nets to prevent malaria. And it was a great training opportunity for those young adults who learned all of the life cycle of the malaria parasite. It's a parasite. See, I have to learn this myself. And learned the social skills to go door to door, and got the cool T-shirts that were served sort of as their uniforms. And then, so they help end malaria in that town. But then as soon as malaria is taken care of, they have now the capacity to address other waterborne diseases, diabetes, HIV/AIDS that also plague the village there. So it's a real amazing thing. Malaria is the first step, but it opens the door to a whole healthcare capacity that's utterly missing in much of rural Africa. There's the baobab tree. So the very poorest neighborhood in this village, the village is really just an accumulation of neighborhoods, is here by this baobab tree. And a baobab tree it's the town center. And so this is the place that the healthcare activists went, and they set up a couple of little folding chairs under the tree, and everybody from this neighborhood came out. This was the one place when we were in Angola that we saw people with the hair discoloration that's an indication of severe malnutrition. And these very poor homes, almost none of which had real walls, they were built out of sticks and sugarcane sacks, sort of like canvas sacks. And they came out to sign up to receive bed nets to protect them from malaria. I was with one marvelous pastor who was talking to some of the parents that were there to sign up for their bed nets, and she was explaining to them, and she explained to us that when you're first bit by a malaria mosquito, you get fairly light symptoms. And it's later, after the parasite develops over time, that you get the really serious symptoms. And that in the local language in that village, the words are different for those two phases of the disease. So people use one word to describe the light symptoms that they get when they're first infected, and they use another word to describe the life-threatening symptoms that come later. So she was explaining to people, no. When you get those first symptoms, the light symptoms, you must go get treatment when it's still possible to treat and save a life. Okay. So far in the conference, we are kicking this off tonight because we think you're the coolest. And because this is a disease of young people, we feel like maybe you'll get it a little bit. So far, in the annual conference, in Rocky Mountain Annual Conference, all of the cabinet members, that's all the district superintendents and me and all of the executive leadership team, staff of the conference, have all made a commitment to support this effort. All of the members of the Board of Stewards who are elected and represent different groups in the conference, they've all made a commitment to give towards that $1.2 million goal. All of the leaders of United Methodist Women in the conference have made a commitment to support this goal. We've had one advanced gift of $15,000. We have several churches that, before we've even asked them, have made a pledge to this effort. So what we would love is, out of gratitude for the safety we enjoy from this disease, if everybody here for this event this weekend would make a commitment, doesn't need to be a big commitment, but some commitment to participate in eradicating malaria. In addition, we think it'd be way cool if you called your senators and representatives. Mike Dent and Kunli, were you there in December? Several of the members of our team traveled to the Capitol in Washington, D.C. in December to lobby for continued funding for anti-malaria work around the world. So you probably could even text your representative or your senator, right? You guys are way ahead of us on that. And then that we hope that you'll work with your youth group, your school team, your neighborhood to raise funds for this purpose. But most of all, to go back to your church and get your church involved and really ask your church to get behind this effort, because we can, we must, we will. All right. Your theme this weekend is, you probably don't know this yet, all hands on deck? All hands on deck. So we need your hands on deck to help us with this. The United Methodist Church has not bound together to do this big a project ever in its life. This will be the largest single effort that the whole church has gotten behind in our history. And we are able to do this. And so it's, and it'll be a good thing for us and for the world if we do. All right, I think we're going to sing one more time. Mosquitoes. Stand up. Mosquitoes, they fly high. Mosquitoes, they fly low. Mosquitoes, they fly everywhere. Mosquitoes kill no more. Thank you.
Thank you, Bishop Elaine. What a blessing you are to us in so many ways, and she's leading the way as an example. Over on the table there where you see the Imagine No Malaria and the mosquito net and Christy Kennison from our steering committee, there's a packet for every congregation represented tonight. So make sure whoever the leader of your youth group is, what's an adult or president of your council or whatever, gets one of these. There's a wonderful letter that tells you what's in it and how to respond and how to make the commitments, and you can make copies of the material. There's the DVD in there with Polly Perrette, a couple of PSAs and other things that you can share in your church, in your congregation. So, Becca Fenton, are you next to come up to say something? Thank you again for your listening and your commitment you're going to make. I'm like Bishop Elaine, my wife and I have been praying about our commitment. You know, every time we pray, we keep going up in what we want to give. So we're going to have to quit praying about this because we want to make a big difference and save lots of lives with you. Bishop, are you going to say something now?
You know, my assistant gave me a little letter the other day acknowledging a gift that I gave in December. It was a very modest gift. And she gave it to me and said, here, this is, they've gotten your pledge. I said, oh, that's not my pledge. That's just for those calendars. I made calendars with pictures of Angola that I gave people for Christmas, and I made a gift to Imagine No Malaria for each of the calendars. I gave as much to Imagine No Malaria as I gave to Costco to print the calendars, right? But no. I said, no, this is one of my 3 top commitments for the next 2 years. And I take it very seriously. So isn't there a little panel? Is it a question and answer time with a panel? I think. Christy and Kun Lee, I think the whole team, isn't it? Young Suk? Becca?
So we would like to welcome any questions any of you guys might have about malaria or anything we've said or not said. Yes, Caitlin?
How long is the program? When do we need to have all the money for?
Great question. The goal is to get all the commitments in and to raise the money by World Malaria Day of 2014. World Malaria Day is April the 23rd, but churches and individuals can make commitments over 3 to 5 years. What we're looking for is the commitments, and the money can come in over the next 3 to 5 years. 2014, I'm sorry, 2014, thank you. Who else has a good question? Go ahead. Okay, who has a question of the steering committee? Oh, come on, don't be shy. Yes, yes, ma'am. It does exist. It's a separate organization, but it goes beyond that. As you heard, NETS was prevention, and now we've added the advocacy, the education, the treatment. It goes beyond the NETS thing. There are still NETs involved. As Bishop Elaine said, we distributed like 9,000 of them when we were there for that 1 week. Yeah, that's a great story. When we were in Angola, there's a Methodist radio station, there's a Methodist university. This country has like 4 million people in the capital where we were. And one of our team members, Burl Krebs, that's the story you want me to tell, was it?
I guess I spent more time at the radio station. A part of this effort is United Methodist Communications funded development of a church-owned radio station in the capital city. And the purpose of the radio station is public education about malaria and other health issues. They also do sports casting and popular music and all kinds of stuff, but it was so cool. We went up there, what was it, 9 o'clock or 10 o'clock at night, and there were probably 20 young adults that were working this radio station. It was a really happening place. There were a lot of people, kind of social gathering place, as well as a public information center. So you were going to tell it. On the campus.
It's on the campus of the United Methodist, higher education center, in Angola. It's really a cool place, and what they've done with it, and on the architectural side of it, the expansion of the buildings and the growth, and it's not just geared toward religious education. They provide across the board education to really raise the new core of leaders for Angola.
Kunle, where'd you grow up?
I grew up in Nigeria, and I can talk about malaria because I've had malaria many times, and I can actually share my own experience with you. When I was about your age, at age 16, I was in high school, and I really had malaria at the time. I came home because I was in a boarding school, so the hospitals were there, but it was preferable that I go home. I'll get better care at home. And my fever, I had a fever of about 105, 104, 105 temperature for about a week plus, continuously. And during the process of treatment, nothing worked because of my high temperature. And if not for the sake of somebody that was educated that says, well, the first thing they needed to do was to get my temperature down before the medication could work. I wouldn't be standing here if for not that one, quick thinking person. So malaria is something that kills. And anytime we have an opportunity to really do something that allows children to grow to their full potential, that is a great thing to do. So I implore you to just not within yourselves, go beyond yourselves to your local churches, talk to your friends. No matter how little your contribution is, it does work and it helps. So I encourage you all to do that.
Thank you. What church are you from, Kunle?
Park Hill United Methodist Church.
Any other questions of the steering committee? Yes, sir. He's ready now. How much money have we gotten raised so far? About 27 million was the last I heard, toward the goal of 75. So over a third of the way. Yeah, give yourselves a hand. The bishop mentioned the Bill Gates Foundation, Bill and Melinda Gates. They gave $5 million, so they walk the talk. They put their money where their mouth is. Other questions? Anybody? All right. Yes.
I want to say one more little thing about science, because I think one question I often get is, why don't we just have a vaccine? Has that ever entered any of your minds? Why don't we just develop a vaccine for this? And you know, that wasn't in the plan. We're talking about prevention and treatment. We're not talking about vaccinating as part of the prevention. And there's a principle in infections where you're never going to get any more immunity from a vaccine than you get from the disease itself. And with malaria, you get a little bit of protection, you get immunity, but it only lasts about 6 months. So they've been working on some vaccines, and they're not so bad for travelers or for foreigners that come in, but they only last about 6 months. That's not financially sustainable. They keep working on them, projects keep coming. But that's one of the reasons why babies are at so much risk, because their immune system's totally naive. They've never seen this disease before. So when they get it, they get really, really sick and they can die. But the people that live there, they reinfect them. They get reinfected about every 6 months to every year, depending on how the cycle of their rainy seasons. So they're constantly building up a little bit of immunity. They still get it, but they don't get as sick. But if Kunli now went back to Africa, to his home, and if he didn't take preventive medicine, he would get just as sick as a tiny baby. So it's not just that adults do survive, but adults can get very, very sick with malaria if they haven't been with it all their life. So if an adult person now would go there and not take the disease, any one of you could die very easily of malaria in West Africa. Thanks.